Hello and welcome back to another episode here with IVF Daddies. Today I've got the amazing Dr. Huang back because, as most of you know, currently Los Angeles seems to be on fire, and there have been a lot of questions around what happens within an IVF clinic when something like this happens. So, first of all, Dr. Huang, thank you so much for taking time out today to come and talk to us. I know it's a challenging time and you're probably wanting to be with family and friends and things and helping. So thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Richard, thanks for having me. And, as you said, it's been a very difficult week for Los Angeles, and props to kind of the firemen, the firewomen in LA and even around the world who have kind of come here to help out. But, as the first responders to kind of keep the residents and the city safe, what we do may seem small, but we're kind of the first responders when it comes to fertility care. So the fertility colleagues and centers around us, we're here 24/7. So this is just what we do.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. I mean, it's heartbreaking to watch, right? Lives have been lost, homes have been burnt to the ground, businesses have gone, livelihoods are gone. And, my heart and Julio's heart goes out to everybody. I wish we could help more. And when I've been watching those scenes unfold and on the news and on TV and obviously on social media, one of the things that's jumped out at me is you've got a whole bunch of people who have sperm, eggs, embryos frozen at the clinic, and you may well be their last resort to having a family, right? So if I were in those shoes, I would be really worried about what's happening to everything that I have frozen. Can you explain a little bit about how that works within the clinic?
Yeah, no, and it's very timely, and the same concerns that you're hearing are the same concerns that our patients are reaching out to us, kind of just making sure that, their tissue is very safely stored. And while this is very current, we've also been preparing for this for decades, right? So we have great monitoring system. We're able to in real time monitor temperature. So when it gets too hot or too cold, um, we're able to monitor our liquid nitrogen systems, which is critical to the storage of tissue, whether it's eggs, embryos, or sperm. And by using liquid nitrogen, which is we don't need electricity. So the important thing for a lot of people to keep in mind is that our storage technology and protocols are able to keep tissue safe, independent of whether or not there's power. Now we're limited to kind of approximately, depending on the storage systems, 3 to 5 days. The technology we use here is using liquid nitrogen. And so our tanks are filled with liquid nitrogen that we check daily. Okay. And there are monitoring systems to kind of check the levels of liquid nitrogen. But if there was a power outage now, we would have the systems in place for 3 to 5 days without electricity. Now that gives us 3 to 5 days. We won't wait that long. It gives us enough time, though, to mobilize a team to get the tissue to a safer place. So monitoring is critical. So whether it's temperature, whether it's kind of the liquid nitrogen to keep the tissue safe, but more importantly, today and the week kind of before us has been air quality, right? Because you can imagine that air quality that affects our health and may affect embryo health. So we also monitor that very closely. We look at VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds. So there's monitoring looking at that and kind of the safety of kind of the air in our laboratories. Labs have a positive pressure system so that clean air kind of stays in the laboratory. So we're able to maintain that. And then there are high grade filtration systems built into labs. We've brought in additional filtration systems to kind of also have the cleanest air for the embryos that we're currently creating. And then even there are inline filters within the incubators to kind of maintain the best outcomes possible. So monitoring is critical. In addition to monitoring, our storage protocol allows us, like I've mentioned, with liquid nitrogen, we don't need electricity. So in the worst case scenario, if power in the building went out, and we do have generators too, so that allows us to kind of continue to take care of the patients kind of, on an hour to hour basis to have generators in place. But even if we exhausted the generators, power went out, our storage protocols allow us to still maintain tissue safety for days without electricity.
I mean, that sounds incredibly well thought through. So I'm picturing in my head, you have like a big room filled with liquid nitrogen and air purifiers and all those different things. Is that the case? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, there are different storage kind of containers and units that every IVF center uses. The traditional ones are what you're envisioning, kind of these dewars, these tanks filled with liquid nitrogen. They come in different sizes. Some are smaller, making it more mobile. Some are bigger. There's long-term storage. So exactly, it's exactly what you're envisioning. Every center has, very secure rooms, as I said, that are temperature alarmed so that if there's any deviation of kind of what our expectations are, we can act on it in real time very quickly.
So, a question for you. You've had a monitor go that the electricity is gone, and you're like, okay, great. Somebody comes in and fixes it. They look out the window and they see one of these fires approaching. What then?
So, in that circumstance, which is a very realistic possibility, and we're seeing it, we have dear colleagues, in cities and parts of the city where evacuation orders are in place. Now, at Reproductive Partners, we're lucky enough that we have three freestanding, independent laboratories. And while I'm sitting in our Beverly Hills office, we have an office in Redondo Beach with a freestanding lab and staff that are ready also, and we're working independently. Similarly, we have another freestanding lab in Orange County. And so Reproductive Partners is lucky enough that we have multiple labs that we're constantly in communication. We recognize the different levels of threat in terms of the fires, and not just fires, any natural disaster, right? So within our practice, we're lucky enough to have multiple labs so we can communicate and we can move tissue as needed. But this is a community, and as you've been witnessing, neighbors are neighbors. And similarly, in the last 72 hours, colleagues at other centers have been communicating. And so we have lines of communication with our colleagues at other centers that maybe are like different levels of risk, that we're coming up with contingency plans. So we will be helping each other out when it's necessary. But in the situation you provided, in that dire circumstance where instead of the sun shining brightly kind of from the window, if there was a fire, which we have seen remotely, in that circumstance, we would mobilize our team. There are also companies that specialize in the transport of cryo tissue. So we would communicate with them, they would be mobilized, our team would be mobilized, and we would transport either the tissue to a local, one of our RPMG centers. But God forbid it was a natural disaster that took out, the greater LA area. Then we would look at partner practices outside of Los Angeles, whether it's San Diego or San Francisco or outside of California. We have also partners in other parts of the country that we would collaborate and safely kind of move tissue where it's needed.
So you can, in effect, take everything that's frozen, put it into, I'm assuming, a mobile tank, and that would
Right.
then move. Yeah.
Yeah. These tanks are very mobile and they come in kind of dewars that, are easy enough to carry, but they also come in bigger dewars where there's, we can store more eggs, embryos, sperm that have wheels that we can very safely kind of push from one room to a truck and then move very safely to a center that may not be as endangered.
And how do you maintain the record keeping of
Mm,
what you've got? Because in
right.
my head, like all of a sudden you're taking stuff out of the freezer, you're putting it into
Yeah.
this, you're then moving it. How do
Right.
I know what is mine?
Yeah. Yeah, very, very good question, Richard. And this is whether there's a natural disaster or not. There are always checks and balances in place. So for us, there's a chain of custody. All right. So that chain of custody includes electronic witnessing. So all of our tissue have barcoded labels that allow us, in addition to print. So there's the name, there's multiple identifiers like date of birth, date of freeze. So there are multiple identifiers. But on top of that, we also have electronic witnessing that have barcodes that are very specific to each patient, each couple, with regard to the sperm, the eggs, and the embryos. On top of that, we have electronic medical records that's cloud based. So if something happened to our paper records, our cloud based systems would allow us also to have a secondary kind of verification. And here we always have at least 2 staff members verify tissue as they're going from one place to another.
Okay, amazing. So that's all the stuff that is currently frozen, right? What happens if I've already started my cycle? You said that there are air purifying systems within the incubators where embryos are growing. But
Right.
again, all of a sudden you look out the window and this fire is coming. Like, what happens?
Yeah, that's obviously a very real kind of situation that could happen to us and any of our colleagues in town. If that happened, ideally, kind of, right now, Los Angeles is doing a great job kind of with apps that allow us to kind of get alerts. So there's almost kind of an amber alert that says, hey, you guys are at level 1, level 2, level 3. Now, we don't want to wait until level 3. Level 3 is go. At that point, we already want to be situated. But when you get to a level 2, kind of warning. Number one, we have systems in place that allow us to communicate with all of our patients in real time. So we almost have our own Amber Alert that if we needed to, we could message patients, hey, this is what's happening. And to keep your tissue safe, these are the measures we have lined up. And they might be moving. But if a patient is currently in treatment, again, Reproductive Partners is lucky and fortunate enough to have other labs and surgery centers in Southern California. We're also lucky enough to have partner practices that we could take these patients that are already currently going through treatment to finish treatments, whether it's at a partner facility in San Diego or San Francisco or Dallas. We have those options as well if we have to move out of kind of the greater LA area. If a patient's already kind of about to get their procedure done and there's a fire outside and we're doing a surgery currently to get eggs, we also have the ability to very quickly freeze eggs like we've been doing for a while. It's called vitrification. So we can very quickly freeze and then put it into our doer systems and transport to a safe location. So kind of depending on where the patient is in her treatment, we're lucky enough to have contingency plans to finish the treatment kind of, within the day if we need to. And if they're still kind of a few days away, then we can finish the treatment at another office that we have or a partner practice somewhere that's safe.
Which I mean that's great, and I guess for those people that don't have those partner practices and things, then because obviously there's a lot of time, energy, emotion, money invested in doing a cycle, right? So coming back to what you were saying about having this ability to talk to other colleagues around, because we all know each other in this industry, we're
Right.
all
It,
they would reach out and you'd be like, okay, fine, your lab's just burnt to the ground. Come
right.
to us, we'll help out, I
Yeah.
guess.
And that's the thing. We're a tight knit community. As many fertility centers are there as there are in the greater LA area, we're all partners in this. So some of the colleagues that we've been communicating with are partner practices. Some are not partner practices, and this is where the lines of what type of practice you are really not important.
And that collaboration and that sense of community is what I think we're seeing in Los Angeles, right? We're seeing
Correct.
people going out of their way to help people that they would never have
Correct.
known or seen, and
Oh
just
yeah.
being kind, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been fortunate enough that the fires haven't been kind of directly affecting any of our kind of immediate offices. But another day, there will be a time when those fires will be affecting, perhaps closer to our office, and we'll need kind of those colleagues of ours to help us out, just as much as they need us today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know it's a busy time for you, so I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that information. Above all, stay safe.
Yes.
We're thinking
Thank
of
you
you.
very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, if anything, kind of you can see behind me, kind of the sun is out, and hopefully, kind of our front lines are really starting to kind of get a control. But it is a hard time for the city of LA, and but it's brought us together, and you can see, despite kind of the hardship, the community as a whole, and the community of fertility providers and centers, we're really kind of collaborating to get through this for everybody.
Hats off to all of you. And as I say, stay safe and thank you very much. And we'll talk soon, no doubt.
You got it. Thank you, Richard. Have a great day.
Amazing.
Okay. Okay.